So there it is. Humanity was saved. Or, on the way to it at least. No more living in tents, no more scavenging for food, no more malicious warlords to kill and steal as they saw fit, no more sleepless nights waiting for the alien raids to come, no more public toilets if you could even call them that. For the first time, in hundreds of years, mankind could have a lie-in without the risk of getting their stuff stolen or being murdered in their sleep. It's the little things, The city and humanity itself were finally thriving in a time of calm, indoor plumbing included. Sadly, this newfound peace wouldn't last for long, as some denizens of the city began to divide into distinct factions, each with their own agendas and ideologies on how things should be done. Ugh, politics. To begin with, the disagreements were simply a matter of debate, but before long, without any established government or law enforcement to constrain them, the factions began to take it a little bit further than a few harsh words, and eventually a full-blown civil war broke out within the city's confines. The infighting that had infected the city like a virus ultimately brought the settlement to its knees, and unbeknownst to the bickering community, the Fallen were preparing early efforts to retake the Traveller. Oh, those sneaky buggers! The fledgling nation would have been broken there and then, if not for a group of Risen that took up arms against the factions, pacifying them and uniting the city in its defence against the imminent alien menace. These brave heroes would come to be known as the First Guardians, and would go on to become the Last City's official defenders. Also, whatever the hell this is. In the aftermath of the faction wars, the need for an organised government had become particularly apparent in order to avoid any further bloodshed, and the Speaker, a Guardian that claimed to speak for the Traveller, created the Consensus, a council of representatives from the remaining factions. With order restored, the first action the Consensus took was to begin the construction of massive walls to encircle the city and protect it from outside invaders. A 1,000-foot wall between you and the neighbours is my kind of passive aggression. Though the city had weathered both civil unrest and the Fallen's advances thus far, peace would not last for long. As the city grew, the Guardians saw consistent action fighting the Fallen, but this had been merely the occasional raid or scouting party. The Fallen House of Devils had something much larger in mind for their next little skirmish. The Battle of Six Fronts was the first major offensive the Last City encountered, in which they were assaulted on, you guessed it, 6 fronts. Despite facing the largest Fallen force they'd seen to date, not a single front broke, as 4 Titan orders bravely held the line and protected their city. Let's hear it for our courageous beefy boys, everyone! Well done! Good lad! Huzzah! Smashing job! Not you! Following the battle, the Speaker created an organisation called the Vanguard, a group of experienced Guardians who could coordinate the Last City's defences and organise dangerous missions beyond the safety of the walls. The first Vanguard would consist of the Hunter, Tallulah Fairwind, the Titan, Saint 14, and their appointed commander and legendary warlock, Osiris. I think there's a strong chance he picked that name himself, don't you? The Vanguard at this time would chiefly be known for organising the Great Ahamkara Hunt, the effort to bring about the extinction of mysterious wish dragons that were deemed a threat to humanity with their ability to alter reality with dangerous consequences at will. Also, they've got that whole monkey's paw thing going on. They're kinda assholes. In the time that followed, the Vanguard would prove to be an invaluable asset to the city, deftly diffusing conflicts as they arose, but one of these struggles in particular proved to be a precursor to something much, much worse. The Battle of Burning Lake marked the city's first engagement with the insidious darkness-worshipping race known as the Hive, who descended from the moon with the intention of finishing what the collapse had started. The Guardians narrowly avoided defeat in a horrifically costly battle, and in its wake, a Titan named Lord Shaxx vehemently opposed the Consensus's intent to launch a counterattack, arguing that the Hive's power needed to be understood before they could be properly defeated. Sounds like a reasonable man.
I've seen enough. I'm calling this one.
Everyone's a critic. Sadly, this great colossus of a genius was ignored, and the Guardians began a bold offensive in an attempt to take back the moon for humanity. Those who led the charge were massacred. Hundreds of combatants fell to the Hive armies and their leader, an indestructible monster named God Prince Crota, who could devour the light within a Guardian. Yummy. Crota led 1,000 of his knights into battle against half that many Guardians, and when the dust settled and the sky burned green, barely any of our heroes had survived. Yeah, just gonna chalk that one up as a loss. The Vanguard, humbled by their crushing defeat, ordered a full retreat from the moon and forbade anyone from returning in the hopes that the Hive would simply lose interest in conquering Earth. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to work out. One surviving Guardian named Eriana III swore revenge against Crota and began to assemble a crack fire team to assault the Hive's underground stronghold, the Hellmouth, all on their own. 6 guardians set out to descend into the eldritch abyss and kill a god, and only one, Eris Morn, returned, her companions having perished in unspeakable agony, and Eris herself left without her ghost or her eyes. Yikes! Despite this tragedy, in the following years, relative normality returned, and the Guardians continued to defend the city from outside threats the best they could. Threats from within, though, imagined or otherwise, would soon begin to chip away at the Vanguard's resolve. Osiris was a driven man, and he embodied better than anyone else the warlock ideology of searching for the truth, even at the expense of any negative repercussions that might bring. He wanted to know the true purpose of the Traveller, and the nature of the darkness that had thrown humanity from grace, and would stop at nothing to find his answer. Finally, somebody with some bloody vision. His theories were considered borderline blasphemous and dismissed by most, but some would come to revere him, which led to his inadvertently creating a cult of personality around himself. His obsession drove him to divert Guardians and resources away from city operations in order to pursue legends and rumours that might lead him closer to the truth he desired. The Speaker, who had used the Traveller's presence as a binding force of faith to keep the community together, decided enough was enough, and had him banished from the city and replaced by his more moderate student, Ikora Rey. Additionally, despite his relatively recent promotion to the role of Titan Vanguard, Zavala took Osiris' place as commander, and with the revolving door that was the Hunter Vanguard currently being held by the less than serious Andal Brask, the last vestige of the old guard was gone, just like that. Whilst Osiris vanished without a trace, a familiar threat began to rear its ugly spidery head once again. The Fallen had continued their assaults in perpetuity, but none had come close to the Battle of Six Fronts, until, that is, the House of Kings led the houses of Devils and Winter in a massive combined assault on the city. The Battle of Twilight Gap took place on the outskirts of the city, at, funnily enough, Twilight Gap, a military installation from the Golden Age. A force organised by one of the few remaining Iron Lords, Saladin Forge, was dispatched to intercept the encroaching Fallen army, and yet another bloody battle ensued. You'd think with an army of undying super soldiers there'd be a few less of these. After an arduous struggle to defeat the unending hordes of Fallen, Lord Saladin ordered a retreat from the battlefield, believing the outer wall lost. However, one rogue fireteam of 6, led by our very own Lord Shax, disobeyed their commander's orders and secured the gap alone, allowing the city's forces to rebuff the Fallen assaulting the walls and drive them back into the wilderness. Despite the fireteam's heroic efforts, many Guardians died in the defence, and as a result, the Vanguard was spurred into becoming more proactive in tackling external threats. Lord Shax also created the Crucible, an arena where newer Guardians could train against one another to raise a new generation and replenish the city's dwindling forces, also to apparently mine salt from poor saps like me. Following the battle, Saint 14 rallied an army of Guardians and began a crusade to rid the city of the Fallen in the surrounding lands. His campaign was ultimately successful, and in one of the battles with the remaining Fallen, he personally killed Solkis, the king, or Kel, of the House of Devils. As a result, the Fallen's constant attacks on the city would temporarily cease, and for the first time in years, humanity had a brief moment of respite. The Speaker, suspicious of what Osiris was doing outside the city, would then send Saint on a manhunt for the ex-commander who had recently been sighted on Mercury, attempting to study a Vex collective that had taken control of the planet at the dawn of the Dark Age. Neither Saint nor Osiris were seen again for the remainder of the City Age, but their stories would continue later down the line. Ooh, spoilers! In any case, for the time being, the city continued to grow and change in a state of relative peace, but before long, internal strife returned as the Consensus fractured under the weight of differing ideals. The long-standing member of the Consensus and leader of the Concordat, Lysander, led a coup against the Speaker and the other factions, attempting to install his new government in the seat of power in a slightly less than democratic manner. This attempt was swiftly defeated by the combined forces of New Monarchy and the Guardians, resulting in Lysander's ejection from the city and his faction's replacement by a group named Future War Cult, who saw conflict as inevitable and sought to prepare the city for such a fight. Gotta say, inviting any group with the word cult in their name seems like a little bit of a misstep to me, but hey, at least they're being practical. In the later stages of the City Age, the ongoing war with the Fallen continued, and though no all-out battle, the likes of Six Fronts or Twilight Gap was fought, the city suffered losses as much as they achieved victory. Bit of a mixed bag. One notable loss was that of the death of the Hunter Vanguard Andal Brask, who was killed by the fallen mercenary known as Tannix. His friend, Cade Six, who had dared Brask into the role of the Hunter Vanguard years before, took up the mantle in the memory of his friend, a decision he'd say he'd come to regret for years after. And with that, life went on for a time. The Consensus squabbled over minutiae, The Vanguard protected the city, the Fallen plotted and schemed against them, and the Hive up above waited for the opportunity to strike. Until one fateful day, a rather irritating ghost whose search for his guardian had been a very, very long one, finally happened upon your presumably mangled and rotting / rusted body, and for whatever reason saw this idiot who'd probably died slipping on a brick or something, and deemed you worthy of a different destiny. Many stories of this ghost and its guardian would be told in the years to come, and I'm sure we'll get around to some of them soon enough. But for now, eyes up, Guardian. Hello again everybody, welcome back, and thank you very much for slogging your way through this series. If you enjoyed it, you can leave a like, and if you'd like to see more of this rubbish, then you can subscribe to my channel. We'd love to have you. If you'd like to chat about the lore or whatever, there's obviously the comments down below, or you can drop by my Discord or Twitch, links in the description, so you can yell at me directly, that's always fun. As usual guys, I've been Luke, this has been Chronicler, and you have been smashing. Oh, chillo.